Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we are working once again from Teresa Carl Sanders' Outlander Kitchen Cookbook, and we are going to be making cream of non-toxic mushroom soup. The reference there is from the book A Breath of Snow and Ashes, book 6, I believe, where a family is in very bad straits and they eat toxic mushrooms. So these are obviously non-toxic. So we love mushroom soup, love cream of mushroom soup. I did have a little bit of a problem finding different varieties of mushrooms. She says to use just wild mushrooms. I usually want to stay away from portobellos in that case because they're really a lot like the white mushrooms. But I managed to find shiitake, and then when I had to go to the grocery store again because I forgot celery, I forgot I was almost out of celery, I found some oyster mushrooms. So I've got about half and half here. So they are cut into a roughly a dice. For her, in her knife skills section, she says when she calls for a dice, she wants it to be about a 1/4 inch square. They might be a little bit bigger than that, but that's okay. And it is a pile of mushrooms. I have some butter and some olive oil heating in my soup pot here. She says to use a large saucepan. I like this particular pan for a relatively kind of small batch of soup, which is what this is. So she says when it starts to bubble, which is kind of starting to bubble, and I've heard the little sort of sizzling from the butter, to add all of these things, including all of our mushrooms. They cook down an awful lot and give up a lot of moisture, but yeah, we'll see. And in addition to the mushrooms, at this point we add some celery, which has also been diced, some minced garlic, and quite a bit of diced shallot. So I'm going to add those. There we go. Excuse me. And we also add some salt and pepper at this point. Salt is just our standard kosher, which looks like I'm going to have to replenish, but I can probably get just about enough from what I have in my salt cellar here. Yeah, there we go. We'll probably have to add a little bit more later because our stock we're going to be using later is not salted. And pepper. And she calls for a white pepper in this. Usually recipes will call for this mostly because they don't want the specks of black from black pepper in this. It has a slightly different flavor profile, and I really don't use it very often. I don't really care about looks most of the time, so I just use black pepper. But I bought it for this recipe. So I bought it pre-ground too because I didn't want to have to have another grinder for that, for something I don't use very often. So all of this is going to be cooked and stirred occasionally until the mushrooms are soft and have given up their moisture and the moisture has evaporated. So as mushrooms cook, they give off a lot of moisture, and then the moisture evaporates and the mushrooms can then brown. So first you kind of have to go through the wet stage, and then eventually all that moisture will evaporate and you can get nice dry brown mushrooms. So I'm going to stir this up a little bit and keep checking on it occasionally. She says this will take 8 to 12 minutes at this medium heat. I'm not sure about that. I feel like it'll take longer. but we will keep an eye on it. At about 4 or 5 minutes in, we definitely have started to wilt a little bit, and they're starting to get cooked, but there's a little bit of juice. I don't know if we'll get more. We'll see. We're at about 8 or 9 minutes now, and we might almost be there, but I am going to let it go a couple more minutes. We've got a little bit of moisture in there, but we'll see. I don't think we're going to get any more really, but we're supposed to cook this until it's all gone. So you can ignore what I'm doing in that pan because I am just going off script a little bit here since I have extra mushrooms. I'm making them, frying up some mushrooms to garnish with this. We're about 11 minutes. I think this is probably good. And the next thing we do is we deglaze the pan with a little bit of brandy. And then we're going to cook this until the brandy is pretty much all gone, has evaporated. So we got all the flavor, but none of the liquids. I'm going to call this almost dry. It's been 3 to 4 minutes. And now I'm going to deviate from the recipe just a little bit. She wants you to take this, put it into a food processor and puree it, and then put it back into the dish. I'm going to add just a little bit. I'm going to turn the heat off. Add just a little bit of this cold vegetable stock, which we have made on this channel before this. We'll get that up for you, and I'll link it above, which is the next thing we're going to add anyway. So I'm not cheating too much here. And I'm going to use my hand blender for this. The vegetable stock is just to give it a little more liquid to work in, but I may not get it quite as smooth with this, but I don't really care. So. All right, I'm going to put the rest of this broth in here and just give it another whirl and see if that helps a little bit more. Of course, I made a huge mess because that's what I do, but not silky, velvety smooth, but it will be perfectly fine for me here at home. Now I'm going to turn the heat up to medium high, and we're going to bring this to a boil. Okay. We're about to a boil. I don't know, been 3 or 4 minutes. I'm going to turn it down, and we're supposed to simmer this for 30 minutes. So in about 30 minutes, this will be just about done. So I'll just keep an eye on it, keep it at a simmer. Yeah, at that point we'll have a little bit more to do. It'll be just about done in 30 minutes. Okay, so our timer just went off for our 30 minutes. Pretty sure it's fine. I've had to keep sort of lowering the heat to keep it at a simmer, but we're good. The next step is to thicken this slightly. A lot of times you'll use a roux, which is a combination of butter and flour that you cook, or you'll use a beurre Meunier, which is a combination of butter and flour that is not cooked and you just put it in at the end. This she calls a liaison of cream and eggs, which will just provide a little bit of thickening and a little bit of creaminess. And I don't know, I don't think I've ever done this before, so that's pretty cool. I have my cream measured out, and I have my egg yolks. So I said cream and eggs, it's cream and egg yolks. Mostly the yolks, a little bit of whites in there. Yep, it's probably fine. So I'm going to add them together in this measuring cup and mix them up. She says gently, whatever. They just need to be mixed. All right, so we've got this, sort of pale yellow cream, and now we have to temper the eggs. I'm gonna turn this down even more because we don't want this to boil after these egg yolks go in. So I'm gonna take a ladle of the soup, and I'm gonna switch my hands because right-handed. Take a ladle of the soup and mix it in here just to bring those up a little bit in temperature. So hopefully it won't curdle. And now we put all of this into our soup and stir it, and be very careful not to let this boil. We just want this to sort of heat up the cream and egg yolk mixture and not boil, and mix it together, obviously, and then everything will be done. Let me see if she says how long we should keep this. So she says just heat it gently, and really, soup was hot enough that I'm sure those eggs are fine by now. I'm gonna keep my heat low, but now I'm gonna taste it. I've already added a little more salt, actually half again as much salt, and I still think it's gonna need more. So yeah, basically I think I'm gonna double the salt. I do like things a little bit salty, but it's not salty at all right now. It is a little better. All right, so now I'm going to taste it one more time. So I would go I'm going to go a little bit more salt. Pepper I think is good. So I would at least double the salt in this. But pepper is fine. There were no other seasonings to add. Everything else is vegetables or whatever we had in our stock. So much better. So that's it. Stay tuned. We'll let you know what we think of it. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make cream of non-toxic mushroom soup from Teresa Carl Sanders' Outlander Kitchen 1 cookbook. There's a 2 now as well. And I liked the flavor. I felt that it was a tiny bit sweet, but I think that came from the vegetable stock, because the vegetable stock had a lot of leeks in it, as I recall, and it just had a lot of sweetness to it. So I'm not sure I would use that vegetable stock again for the mushroom soup. I might use a chicken stock because we are not vegetarian, so it doesn't really matter to us, and we like the flavor of chicken stock. So we liked the flavor, tiny bit sweet, but the texture was a little, I would prefer a creamier texture, but that was probably my fault. So I believe she wanted me to put all of the mushrooms into a food processor after they were cooked and process them there. And I, being lazy, decided to use my immersion blender, go ahead and add the cream and the broth and stuff and use my immersion blender. And that did not get a really smooth product. And I don't know that you'd ever get a totally smooth product, but if I did this again, I would definitely try it her way and see if we preferred the texture there. You just get a little bit more bits than, it's there. It's a little chunky. It's not a smooth product. The bits are a little bigger than I would prefer.
But as is, it's vegetarian, it's gluten free, and it was pretty good. We ate the leftovers. We really enjoyed it, and I would make the soup again. But like I said, probably use a different stock. Um, but it does take a lot, a lot of mushrooms. So it does have a really great mushroom flavor from all the mushrooms. Anyway, if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.